Hey everyone, ready to dive in. Today we're tackling a topic that might just be a game changer, especially if you've ever felt, well, a little swamped with information overload.
Oh, I think we've all been there.
Right, ever feel like you're trying to drink from a fire hose?
Especially these days, it's just nonstop.
So what if, and stick with me here, what if you had this smart expert like in your back pocket, something that could sift through all that data for you and just hand you the need to know stuff?
Sounds like science fiction.
Kind of, right. But that's what's got us so intrigued about this new research.
It's a paper hot off the presses from Florida Atlantic University. They're calling it Smart Expert System, Large Language Models as Text Classifiers.
Catchy, right. But let's back up for a second. Make sure everyone's on the same page. We've all been there. You need information and you need it fast. Maybe it's a presentation at work. You're trying to, really wow your boss with some insights. Or maybe you're just trying to win an argument at your next family dinner. We've all got our reasons.
Whatever the reason, getting to the heart of the matter quickly is key.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But traditionally, getting all that info organized, that's always been a bit of a slog, hasn't it?
Oh, it's the worst. Highlighter marks all over the place, index cards for days. Who has time for all that?
And that's where things get really interesting. We're talking about LLMs, large language models. They're everywhere these days, but what's the connection with, actually classifying all that text?
So imagine this. Instead of you poring over everything and highlighting, saying this is important, this is positive, whatever categories you need, the LLM, it does it for you.
Hold on. So I can just, dump a bunch of documents on this LLM and it just figures it all out.
That's the general idea, yep. Of course, there are nuances, but the big idea is LLMs, they've been trained on tons and tons of data, way more than we could ever get through, so they just get language in ways that, honestly, older systems never could.
So we're talking about a potential revolution in how we deal with information.
Potentially, yeah. But before we get ahead of ourselves, got to understand how these LLMs actually do their magic, right?
I'm all ears.
Okay, so the old way, the traditional way of text classification, was all about manual feature extraction. Basically, you had to tell the computer what to look for, every single little detail, like writing out a rule book for how to understand language.
Sounds like a nightmare, to be honest.
It was super technical, took forever. But LLMs, they changed the game because they come, get this, pre-trained. They've already seen more text than any human ever could, so they're ready to go right out of the box.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but how do we know they can actually deliver? How do we know these LLMs are actually as good as they sound at classifying text? That's the question, right? It
Yeah.
all sounds great in theory, but can they actually, walk the walk?
That's where the fun begins. The researchers, they put these LLMs through a real gauntlet, tested them on not one, not two, but different data sets.
4. Okay, now we're talking. Lay it on me.
And these weren't just random words thrown together. Each one was chosen very carefully to represent, a different challenge these LLMs might face in the real world.
So like an obstacle course, but for AI. Okay, I'm into it. Hit me with data set number 1.
First up, they went right for the heart of, recent history, a data set of tweets all about COVID-19. Remember those days? Twitter was a wild ride.
Don't remind me my doom scrolling was out of control. But I get it. Tough challenge for an AI, right? All that slang, sarcasm, the way language was changing so fast.
Exactly. Could the LLMs figure out the sentiment? Positive, negative, neutral amidst all that chaos. That's what they wanted to know.
Okay, drum roll, please. We managed to crack the code of pandemic Twitter.
The results were pretty impressive, actually. In a lot of cases, the LLMs were better than the old ways of doing text classification, especially once they got a little fine-tuning.
Hold on. Rewind. Fine-tuning. What's that all about?
Great question. So remember we talked about LLMs being pre-trained. They've seen a ton of data already. But fine-tuning, it's like giving them a crash course in a specific topic.
So, they showed the LLM a bunch of COVID tweets, and we're like, okay, now go figure out the rest.
Basically, it helps them zero in on the specific ways people use language in that context, And yeah, it made a big difference. The LLMs got even better at understanding the sentiment of those tweets.
Okay, that's pretty wild. So round 1 goes to the LLMs. They conquered the Wild West of COVID Twitter. What was next on this AI obstacle course?
Next up, they went from the world of viral tweets to something a little more, shall we say, buttoned up. They tackled a data set of economic texts.
Ooh, now that's a whole different ballgame. Financial language. It's practically a foreign language, even to me.
Right. One wrong word and boom, market crash. So this data set, it was all about nuance. Could the LLMs figure out what actually mattered? Understanding that market correction doesn't always equal panic.
I gotta say, even I struggle with that sometimes. So how'd they do? our LLM friends? Were they ready for Wall Street?
This is where things got a bit trickier for them, I'm not going to lie. They did okay, don't get me wrong, but they didn't ace it quite like they did with those COVID tweets.
So even AI can get a little lost in the weeds of financial jargon. I
Yeah.
find that strangely comforting.
It shows there are still things that humans are better at, that common sense, that deeper understanding of the world. LLMs are getting there, but they're not quite there yet.
Fair enough. Okay, 2 data sets down, 2 to go on our little AI challenge here. What was next?
For the next round, they went from the high-stakes world of finance to something a little more relatable, I think, for the average person. They tackled e-commerce reviews.
Ah, yes, the land of 5 stars. Highly recommend. And also, this product broke after a week. Do not buy.
Oh!
I can already picture the LLM trying to sort through it all.
Right. It's not just about understanding what the words mean, but also, like, is this review legit? Can I trust this person? So this data set, it tested if the LLMs could categorize these reviews, figure out, is this about a book? Is it about electronics? That kind of thing.
And could they tell which ones were actually helpful versus just, like, noise? Because, let's be real, sometimes reading those reviews feels impossible.
You're telling me. But get this, the LLMs, they kind of crushed it, especially after a bit more of that fine-tuning we talked about. One specific LLM, they called it Qwen 7B, it got over 97% accuracy.
97%. Okay, now that's impressive. It's like having a personal shopper, but for information.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the potential here, big time.
Right, imagine the possibilities.
Okay, last challenge, bring on the final boss. What'd they throw at these LLMs to wrap things up?
For their final test, they had to face a foe as old as the internet itself. Spam.
Ah, the classic. If you can build an AI that can truly defeat spam, well, you've basically solved the internet.
Pretty much. This time they focused on text messages. Can the LLM tell a real message from a friend versus a promo blast versus, oh no, a phishing attempt trying to steal all your info?
It's like they have to understand not just the words, but the intention behind them.
Yeah.
Did they manage to outsmart the stammers?
They did. This was another win for the LLMs, way better than those old school spam filters. They were able to adapt and spot those sneaky spam tactics.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from pandemics to online shopping to the dark arts of spam. I'm convinced LLMs are the real deal. But here's my big question, and I think it's on everyone's minds. What does this actually mean for, the average person? How does...
It's the million-dollar question, right? It's easy to get caught up in the tech. But this research, it's about more than just cool algorithms. It's about like a fundamental shift in how we deal with information, how we learn, how we work.
Okay, see, now you've got my attention. Give me the elevator pitch. What does this actually look like in the real world?
Okay, so picture this. You're working on a project, right? And you've got this huge stack of research, papers, articles, reports, you name it.
Been there, done that, still have the coffee stains on the reports to prove it.
Exactly. And you're sifting through it all, highlighting, trying to find the key takeaways. Now imagine you feed all that into your LLM buddy,
Okay.
and instead of you doing all the heavy lifting, the LLM, it summarizes each document for you, pulls out the main arguments, the evidence, everything, all nicely organized.
I mean, that alone would save me, like, a week's worth of work. Easy. I'm listening.
But it gets better. Let's say you're running a business, right? And you're trying to figure out what your customers actually think about your product. You've got reviews coming in from everywhere, social media, emails, all over the place.
It's impossible to keep up with it all sometimes.
Exactly. But now you can feed all that to an LLM, and it doesn't just count positive versus negative. It digs deeper, figures out what people are praising, what they're complaining about, even what they're hoping to see in the future.
It's like having, like, a whole team of analysts, but without having to make small talk by the water cooler.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. The researchers, they think this could actually level the playing field. Right now, this kind of AI, it's mostly big companies using it because it's expensive. But imagine if everyone had access to this. Small businesses, students, anyone who needs to make sense of complex information.
That's a powerful idea. So much potential for good, right?
Yeah.
Education, journalism, even just navigating our daily lives. It's a lot to process.
It really is. And that's why I think the big takeaway here is don't ignore this stuff. LLMs, they're not just a fad. They're already changing the world, whether we realize it or not.
It's both exciting and, I'll be honest, a little intimidating. Like we're on the edge of something big.
We are. And that's what makes it so fascinating to study, right?
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we've given our listeners plenty to chew on for today. A huge thank you to our expert for breaking it all down for us. And to everyone listening, keep an eye on the world of LLMs, because things are about to get very interesting. That's all for this deep dive, but as always, we'll be back soon to explore more of the latest breakthroughs shaping our future. Until then, happy exploring.